They called it a sudden outburst, a group of enslaved Africans in colonial South Carolina who, without warning, grabbed weapons and went on a rampage. At least, that's the myth you've probably heard. But here is the truth. The Stono Rebellion of 1739 was not an impulsive act of chaos. It was a planned, coordinated attempt at freedom, and one of the most organized uprisings in early American history. Let's set the stage. It's September 9th, 1739. Colonial South Carolina sits on the edge of paranoia, heavily outnumbered, with enslaved Africans making up the majority of the population. But these weren't just laborers. Many were from the Kingdom of Congo, already familiar with European warfare, Catholicism, and military discipline. They spoke a shared language, had combat experience, and crucially, knew the power of strategy. At dawn, near the Stono River, about 20 men met secretly. This wasn't a drunken riot or spur-of-the-moment fury. They broke into a storehouse, armed themselves, and raised a flag. Then, in military formation, they marched south toward Spanish Florida. Why Florida? Because Spain had promised freedom to any enslaved person who could reach St. Augustine. This was a destination, a mission, and they picked their timing wisely. It was Sunday, when most slaveholders were in church. The rebellion swelled to nearly 100 participants before being brutally crushed by the colonial militia. Dozens were killed. Survivors were executed or sold. But even in failure, the message was unmistakable. This was not chaos. It was resistance with purpose, and it terrified the colonial elite so much that it led to the Negro Act of 1740, tightening control and surveillance on the enslaved population for decades. So, was the Stono Rebellion a spontaneous outburst? No. It was an organized strike for freedom, carefully timed and courageously led. The real myth is that enslaved people were passive, when in fact, they were plotting liberation right under their captors' noses. If you love peeling back layers of history to expose the myths beneath, this is the History Mythbuster. Like, subscribe, and keep questioning what you've been told.